Tip today in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning and welcome along to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. That's a free phone number. Won't cost you if you want to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing as usual. Coming up on the show this morning, in a few moments' time, in fact, we'll be chatting to one of our regular contributors who believes that people should have the option of ending their own life on their own terms. Several accommodation providers for refugees and asylum seekers are among the premises that have received fire safety notices. We'll have the details on that. We'll continue even remembering the great characters of Tipperary. There will be another episode of The Story of Ireland with our good friend John G. O'Dwyer, and one of our finest singers, my good friend Tommy Fleming, will be with us live in studio ahead of his concert at the Nenagh Arts Centre. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers this morning. The Irish Daily Mail and their lead story: up to 181 adult migrants spent an average of 2 months living among children in Tusla's care after falsely presenting as minors to immigration officials. To the Irish Examiner and the lead story on the Examiner today: parents of autistic children with complex needs have called for a full investigation after learning the principal at their children's school was accused by a former student of emotional and physical abuse in a previous setting. Also reading on the Examiner today that there's another pause in the HSE recruitment plans across regions, including Cork and Kerry, and that's raising fears, as you can imagine, among staff about patient safety. It follows plans to review spending on hiring, including on agency staff for non-frontline roles, meaning clerical and administrative jobs there, I suppose. The Irish Independent and the lead story on the Indo today from Charlie Weston, who tells us that there's been a rise in the number of homeowners taking out green loans from banks and credit unions. Experts said consumers were rushing to upgrade their homes and move to EVs to increase energy efficiency and counter some of the effects of rising prices. And finally, we have a look at the Irish Times, and it's dominated by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and it's a picture of him helping out in a call centre at Labour Party headquarters in London yesterday on the last day of campaigning ahead of today's elections. But Starmer, as we discussed on the programme yesterday, facing the prospect of losing hundreds of council seats right across England, as well as Labour's dominance in the Welsh Parliament. Also reading on the Times today that Iran has said it's reviewing a new US proposal to end the war in the Gulf, and sources said Washington and Tehran were closing in on a one-page memorandum while leaving tricky issues such as Iran's nuclear program for later. So that's a look at what's making headlines today. If you want to make comment on any of that, we'd be glad to hear from you as usual on 083 311 3311. Now, the sister of a British mum who travelled to Switzerland to end her life after the death of her son 4 years ago said this week that no one in the family saw it coming at all. Wendy Duffy, who was 56, had no terminal illnesses but paid £10,000 to end her life at Pegasus, a Swiss-assisted dying clinic, after the death of her son Marcus 4 years ago. Now, the former care worker from the West Midlands had undergone years of therapy and took antidepressants, but had been unable to come to terms with her son's death. Now, we shared a post about this on Facebook recently, and one of our regular contributors, Paul Lafford, was in touch, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, Paul, and good to talk to you today. You're of the belief, Paul, to put it simply, my life, my choice.
Yeah. It's something I feel very, very strongly about. And I suppose before I say anything, I'd like to say, Fran, that there are people this morning probably listening to this who might be suffering with a serious illness and might be going through treatment or something. So I just want to make clear I don't want to cause any distress or anything. These are totally my opinions. But I was in preparation for this. I was just thinking about it. I was just thinking about my own life and how I suppose. Look, I live a very, very active life. I'm in a job that I love. I like to cycle on my bike. I like to play a few tunes on the guitar badly, but I like to play a couple of tunes. And one of my biggest fears is that, especially with, say, if I'm out cycling, that if I get hit by a car or something, and if I fall off my bike, obviously, it would be head first. And one of my biggest fears is that I would get seriously injured, that I might be paralyzed, or maybe brain damaged, or seriously incapacitated. That quality of life that I believe to be living, that would be taken away from me. And I just I wouldn't be able to cope, Fran, if something like that happened. And
how can you be, I beg your pardon, Paul, but how can you be certain of that until you're in the situation? Because I often wonder about that. And you might have the thoughts and beliefs that you're expressing there, Paul, but it's really only when you're in a position that you might be able to make that decision, because you might want to hang on no matter what.
A few years ago, we woke up here on a Friday morning, and it was a perfectly normal day. Keane was going to school, I was going to work, and my wife Caroline was going off to photograph a wedding. And that day, it was the 21st of April 2023, our lives changed forever. That day, Caroline had a seizure, and Caroline ended up being diagnosed with a brain tumour, and she has since passed away, as you know. And that day, Fran, like, we had often spoken about it. Caroline had often said here, like, that she said she said that she'd be a young widow. She always believed I'd be gone first. And I saw Caroline, Fran, a woman. Caroline was a legal secretary in Clonmel there. She was you know this, she was a fantastic piano player,
sure.
Excellent piano player. Yeah. She'd be capable of playing in any band in the country. But she was an unbelievable photographer. She was just brilliant at it. And one evening I came in from work, when Caroline first thing she had to do was brain surgery. And she was 5 hours in brain surgery, and then obviously they do a radio treatment and then chemo. But I saw Caroline go from being this incredibly articulate, very, very, very a brilliant person. I think if Caroline wanted to put her mind to nuclear science, she could do it. She was that good. And I saw the treatment and the effect it had on her, Fran, and my own opinion is that I think the treatment was actually worse than the actual illness itself.
Wow.
I saw Caroline, for instance, one evening, a typical example is I came in from work, and this was early in her diagnosis, and I came in from work and she was inside at her computer in her own little office. Mammy's office is still known as Mammy's office. And she was inside and she was cursing the computer. She said, this flipping thing, there's something wrong with it. She was trying to pay a bill to Federal Express. It was €84. Excuse me. And she was trying to pay it and she couldn't. And she said, there's something wrong with the computer. And I said, do you want me to have a look at it? And I had it paid in 2 minutes. And I just noticed, I said, Caroline could do this with her eyes closed. Mm. And from that moment on, Fran, we all noticed the way Caroline changed, that simple things that Caroline would be capable of doing, she couldn't do it. Like, I mean, one day I heard she was in the kitchen and something fell. And so it was just a spoon. And I just happened to walk down, but she was trying to make a cup of coffee. But she had the boiling water in the kettle and she couldn't actually get it into the cup. And I took it down because the water was going everywhere. And I thought, geez, she's going to get scalded. But here was a woman who could do anything. Like, I mean anything. She could play the piano. Like, I mean, it's still here, the sheet music for Bohemian Rhapsody. Mm. And Caroline could play that note for note. That's how good she was. And that's very hard to play. And I just thought, Jesus, I mean, she fought, Jesus, friend, like, I mean, to answer your question a few minutes ago, like, she fought tooth and nail to live. But this cancer, but the treatment made it impossible. Like, they had her on steroids, which stops any swelling of the brain. And the side effects of that, for instance, are massive weight gain, where she went up, I think it was nearly 5 stone. And then that your muscles, in particular in your back, but in your legs, I'm sitting down here, I'm working from home at the moment, so I'm sitting down here in the living room this morning, and to stand up, you use your thigh muscles, but those muscles were wasted from the steroids. So if Caroline sat down, she had to be held to get up. Now, I saw all this, and as it went on, and then in particular, I spoke to my own GP since, and he told me that the day Caroline was diagnosed, there was no hope. She was basically, there was no hope. So Caroline went through all that suffering, and the whole time through it, she hadn't a hope. And I'm thinking, if that was me, and I'm told, you have a serious injury, you have a serious paralysis, or whatever it is, or something. The biggest, this is a nightmare for me, Fran. This is something that would keep me awake at night. The thought that I couldn't do all the things that I feel that I'm good at doing. Like, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm playing music it's a private function inside there in Clonmel, but one of the top entertainers in the country is going playing for it. And I'm on the undercard. I'm playing before him. And this is something that I am really, really looking forward to. I'm rehearsing for it already. I want to make sure I give a good account of myself on that night. That to me is life. Doing these kind of things, something to aim for, something that I can put my energy into to target. If I was inside in bed this morning, or inside in the hospital, or above in the Central Remedial Clinic in Dublin, seriously injured, maybe brain damaged, that I couldn't live my life as I want to live it now. I want that choice, Fran, to be able to say, no, there's no hope. I want to end it on my terms. And it's something, Fran, that I am serious about.
Sure.
I know there are people already now screaming at the radios, and they're going to be getting, and I know your computer screen will fill up in front of you, saying, no, he can't do this. I don't particularly want euthanasia, that you can just kind of get rid of people. I don't want that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this is my life. Like, if I wanted, I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked a cigarette for 20 years. If I wanted to go down to the shop this morning at 9:15, I could buy 20 cigarettes. I could, knowingly, that cigarettes are very, very bad for me, could kill me. At 10 o'clock this morning, I could go to the off license. I could buy a bottle of whiskey and drink that bottle of whiskey. I know it would kill me. Nobody will stop me. So why can't I have the right that if I am terminally injured, if there's no hope, based on my GP, who I quite literally would trust with my life, specialists, who I would again trust with my life, and they say to me, like in Caroline's case, there's no hope. Okay. I want to be able to say,
Paul,
okay.
could I put a couple of things to you? And I don't mean to distress you in any way, but I could bet that Caroline would have wanted those last months with yourself and Cian, no matter what, because it was precious time. Would that not be accurate?
It would, absolutely.
Even though she was on a very difficult, challenging journey at that point.
Yeah. When we were sitting down in the oncology unit in Cork, and the specialist, Professor Ryo, showed us the MRI scan and showed us the tumours. The tumours, there was 2 tumours there. They could only get out one, and a bit of the other one. The other one they couldn't, and that's what ended up causing Caroline to lose her life. But I just happened to say to Professor Ryo, I said, what's the prognosis? Expecting to be told, we're going to hit this with everything we have, and, Caroline will make a recovery. And she said, 12 months would be a good result. And Fran, when you're sitting there at that moment, that's just like somebody hitting you with a sledgehammer. And I mean that. And obviously we both started crying because, Jesus, how could this happen to us? We were plodding along, everything was going well. Caroline was so tough, so stoic, so... What they told us in the hospital was that basically, for the next few months, make your memories. Make as many memories as you can. And if I was in that situation, I would make those memories. But the way I feel, Fran, I would ask them, how long will you give me, we say that I can enjoy my life as I can enjoy it today. And if they say to me, we'll give you 6 good months, I'd say, okay, give me the 6 good months. And I can make my memories. I can make sure, for instance, that Cian is well looked after, that there's no bills left, that everything is done, that all my affairs are in order. And then I just want to say, okay, I'm 61 years of age now. I've had a good old bloody run of it, in all fairness. And I'd hopefully I'll get plenty more. But if something seriously happened, Fran, I wanted to say, will you give me 6 months, 12 months, whatever, and say, okay, for that 12 months, I want to do my best. But then, as soon as that quality of life that I am accustomed to, once that goes, I want to go as well.
What about the issue of Wendy Duffy then? I mean, in her case, she lost her son. She just couldn't deal with the grief of this. She tried therapy. She tried antidepressants. But grief, I mean, who am I to tell you about grieving? You know, it's different for everybody. It can last years and years. But a lot of people come out of it at the end. She chose to end her own life because she couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel of this. When it comes to mental illness and that kind of thing, do you have concerns about people making up their own mind then, or where grief is concerned, Paul?
I would always trust for instance here, I would trust our GP. I would trust specialists that you've gone to. But like, I mean, again...
But she didn't go... This was her own decision. She didn't even consult with her family on this. She just went and organised this, and she was able to pay £10,000 to end her own life.
Yeah, but I mean, that poor woman, like, I mean, can you just imagine what was going through her mind to actually make that decision?
Yeah. It must have been a dark place, for sure.
I mean, like, every one of us, no matter what, like, I mean, and children would drive you cracked at times. I don't know how I'd cope, like, if anything happened to Ursula. And as I said, and there's times you'd threaten them with a kick in the backside, like, but I mean, you know, I just don't know what I would do. And I don't know what any of us would do, and I don't think we can speak on what with that woman, how she felt, and to get into that really, really, really dark place, to think that this is your only way out, that must be absolutely horrendous.
And what do you think about introducing some legislation around euthanasia here in this country, and what guards and protections you put around it? Do you think that would be very important?
I would sorry to cut across your friend. I would just like to have that choice.
Yeah,
Fran. I mean, euthanasia, I think, is a huge thing. Like, I mean, and there's a lot of ways of looking at it. I am talking purely, but I want the choice. As I said, I can go down, I can buy cigarettes, I can buy drink, whatever it is that I know are harmful to my health, and that could do serious injury or serious damage to my health. And nobody will tell me that I can't do that. I can do it. It's fully legal. But if I find myself in a situation that there is no hope, I mean, there is another side. I mean, I was watching a documentary at the weekend about the former race car driver Alex Nenagh, who passed away at the weekend. And here was a man it's a fantastic documentary, but this man, he lost both his legs in a race car accident in America. And then he turned to hand cycling, and he won Olympic golds in the Paralympics. But sadly, he was hit by a car when he was out training, and he never recovered, but he passed away last weekend. And I was watching this documentary, and the strength and the fortitude that a man like Alex Nenagh had was just unbelievable. But maybe that's what makes these people professional sports people, that they're so good compared to the likes of me. I wouldn't have that, Fran. I wouldn't have that strength to cope, that if I was to look out as a beautiful morning this morning, like, and to look out, and like when I finish work this evening, I go to the gym for a while, and then we walk down, Keelan and myself and our little dog Lucy, we'd walk down to say goodnight to Caroline tonight, and we're heading to the weekend. You'd be looking forward to, you know, doing your things, getting out on my bike and whatever. These are all things that I consider living. This is life. If I couldn't do that, and there's another side of it, Fran, if I was a strain on my family, I wouldn't like that. I mean, I just think, look, if something serious happened, my opinion would be, right, Caroline, put on the kettle, I'm coming.
Yeah, but you've just touched on a very important point there, Paul, and this is one of the concerns that I would have, is that older people might feel that they're a burden on their family. They might want to live, they might want to make the best of the last years of their life, but they might feel a burden, and therefore then if the legislation was in place, they might make the decision based on that. I think that would be sad.
That would be sad, but again, we haven't really particularly spoken here about me getting to old age or me making a decision. I'm talking really, Fran, about if I'm incapacitated mentally or indeed physically. I just couldn't. I wouldn't be able to cope with it. My own father, God rest his soul, Fran, Dad always said, my dad was into fishing and he was into shooting with the gun club in 4 Mile Water, and he was involved in the tidy towns. He loved being involved in stuff. Yeah. And himself and Mum, Dad always said to us, if anything happens to me, and if you keep me alive, with it, or in pain or whatever, or if you have me spoon-fed, or if my dignity goes. Dad was huge into dignity. And he said, if that happens, he always said to us, I'll come back and haunt you. And we used to be laughing at him. Yeah, right, Dad, you know, that's your typical big man. But Mum and Dad went to Clonmel of a Saturday morning to do their shopping like they did every Saturday. He had a stroke when he came home, and Dad was gone Thursday. And that's the way Dad wanted it. And I said, and one of the things that we all said as a family, he warned us, like, he didn't want to drag out, he didn't want to be a strain on Mum, because he was the old stock, I think, Fran, but that's exactly the way he wanted to go. And I couldn't imagine, like, Dad had pancreatic cancer, and they say it's horrible. And people told us afterwards, specialists told us, that Dad had a very, very lucky escape, because there was no hope for him. He was riddled, and there was no hope, and that it's a horrible, horrible, horrible illness. I mean, a friend of mine, Fran, had motor neuron disease.
Yeah.
This was a man perfectly okay mentally, trapped inside his own body. And he told me one day that I called to see him. This is a man that would play golf, he could play soccer, he loved his few pints, loved music, and a very, very popular man in the community, a very, very hard-working man. And he told me one day he was able to communicate by computer. And he told me that the worst thing that could happen to him is that during the summer, if a fly landed on him, on his arm, he couldn't shoo it off.
My God.
Can you imagine anything worse than that?
My God.
And I would not be able to cope with that, Fran, if I was in a situation like something like that. And I know there's people this morning now who are going through a prognosis and through an illness, and I do not mean to cause any upset or distress. I genuinely don't.
Yeah, you're speaking about yourself here and your own feelings.
But I am speaking totally about myself, Fran, but I couldn't imagine anything. If this would keep me awake at night, the thought that, God forbid, if anything happened. And I just want to be able to make that choice, that I can say, I've had a good run, I've enjoyed myself, I've come through good times and not such good times. It's time now to move on. And I just want that choice, that I can make that choice.
All right.
And fully corpus mentis today, for instance, while I'm in perfectly good health, that I could make that decision today, put it in writing, leave it with a solicitor, leave it with I don't know who, and say, right, in that situation, here's what I want.
All right. Paul, great to talk to you as always, and I think you sparked a huge conversation.
Fran, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but before you go, you were talking about characters, and there's one character in Clonmel that I will never forget, and that was Kevin Reardon. And Kevin was one of the, I suppose, he like a street entertainer, but Kevin loved, you often see him on the street in Clonmel singing songs, and he was such a lovely, lovely man. And it's, as I said, when you're talking about characters in Clonmel, Kevin was right up there, and sadly missed.
Well done, Paul. Look, lovely to talk to you as always, Paul. Thank you.
And yourself, Fran.
Good morning to you. Always a pleasure. That's Paul Lafferty speak was there. Barbara says, Fran, I don't trust the Irish government to put proper safeguards in place for assisted dying. Too many things in this country end up affected by incompetence or corruption, and that honestly scares me as a parent. My biggest fear is that I'm no longer here. Decisions could be made about my non-verbal special needs son without the level of protection, advocacy and care that he deserves. I believe vulnerable people need strong, unquestionable safeguards above all else. It's 9:30. Back in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
$1800 938 007, that's our free phone number. Now, local fire authorities have issued 150 fire safety notices in the last 5 years over concerns with potentially dangerous buildings, a new investigation revealed. Records obtained under Freedom of Information by the journal Investigates show there's been a growing number of notices in recent years. And Conor O'Carroll from the journal Investigates join me now. Good morning to you, Conor.
Good morning.
And thanks for your time this morning. Several accommodation providers for refugees and asylum seekers are among these premises that receive fire safety notices, including one, Conor, that was opened without a fire safety certificate at all.
Yeah, you're right. There was during our investigation, we found that, as you say, a number of providers that provide accommodation to refugees and asylum seekers had fire safety notices issued against them. And this includes the Air Power Hotel in Kildare, which actually received 2 fire safety notices in the past few years. And as you mentioned, an accommodation provider in Galway, which opened despite having an application for a fire safety certificate rejected.
Have you had a response from the Department of Justice on this? Because, this is very worrying. We're talking about people's lives here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the Department of Justice did say that that they take the welfare and safety of residents very seriously, and that compliance with fire safety regulations is of paramount importance. And they also said that the department works with accommodation providers and the relevant local authorities to ensure this. In specific relation to the accommodation in Galway, they said that they were provided with an opinion of fire safety from a registered professional before opening the centre, and I suppose they said that this was in line with their guidelines at the time, and so it was sufficient for them. But then after an inspection by the fire authority, a fire safety notice was issued, as there wasn't a fire safety certificate, as you mentioned, and actually the building was partially evacuated because of the fact that there was no certificate granted.
What exactly do you mean when you talk about an opinion of fire safety, Conor?
I'm kind of not fully I'm not sure what the exact kind of parameters of the rules were at the time.
Yes.
But essentially what happened was a registered fire professional working with a consultancy firm was hired to kind of carry out a risk assessment, I suppose, of fire safety, and they deemed it to be kind of sufficiently safe to open, even though the fire authority had rejected the fire safety certificate. And then what happened once the centre was opened, as I say, the fire authority went and inspected it as they do with many premises, and they determined that the fire doors weren't sufficient to kind of stop the spread of the fire, and then also that that because there wasn't a fire safety certificate, they weren't happy to kind of maintain or that the building was being used to house people, and so they instructed the owners to close part of the building, which they did, and I should say that kind of only half of the building is closed and remains so, but the other half it's still open, and it has since been granted a fire safety certificate. So it was just kind of one aspect of the building that was the problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Does it reflect the desperation that's there, though, in terms of finding accommodation, particularly where IPAS is a concern, that almost a blind eye is being turned in some way, Conor?
Yeah, I think obviously it's well documented the kind of the pressure that is on the government to source sufficient accommodation for people arriving. But when we spoke to migrant rights groups, they told us that even though while they recognise this pressure, basic fire safety standards shouldn't be compromised. In order to source accommodation. They said that everyone has a right to live in safe and secure accommodation, regardless of their immigration status.
Yes, when it comes to hygiene, for example, if a premises or a business is inspected in some way, and we've reported on it here on Tipp FM many times over the years, pretty much immediate closure of the business. That appears to be what happens with something like hygiene. But are we very lax by comparison where fire safety is concerned?
Well, I suppose that's probably a question maybe more for a fire officer who could provide a bit more insight and have more knowledge across kind of how things operate elsewhere. But what I will say is that even when these issues are identified by the fire authorities, for all intents, for most cases, the owners do kind of take proactive action to correct the issues and kind of ensure that their buildings are kind of up to standard and compliant.
As well as IPAS centres, your piece also tells us that included are apartments, pubs, restaurants, hotels, nursing homes, and creches.
Yeah. There was our investigation found kind of pretty much every type of building was included in the fire safety notices. And I think as well, even though, as we mentioned at the start, 150 have been issued in the past 5 years, quite often there are multiple parts of a building that are included in that. So, for example, if an apartment block is issued a fire safety notice, they might only issue one notice, but contained within that could be 15 apartments that are all considered to be potentially dangerous. And when we broke down and analysed a lot of these fire safety notices, we found that there were in excess of 215 kind of parts of buildings that were deemed to be in breach of fire regulation.
Tipperary, I think, was one of 6 authorities that didn't provide you with details that could be analysed where these notices are concerned. Is that correct, Conor?
Yeah, so there were 6 fire safety notices issued by Tipperary County Council, and as with every other local authority, we did ask kind of to receive the kind of information as to the address of the building or the type of building, so that we could and the inspection report, so that we could kind of analyse as we did with most others. And these fire safety notices are public documents, but Tipperary told us that they weren't willing to provide that. And that if we wanted to go and view it, we would have to make an appointment with the fire authority and actually go and view it in person, as is kind of that is kind of how it is laid out in the legislation. But they were only one of 6 councils that took that path.
It's interesting, but I just find it all very, very worrying indeed. What did you come to any conclusion at the end of the investigation, Conor?
Well, I think, specifically in relation to the IPAS accommodation, obviously, as we mentioned, there are significant pressures there for the government. But I think it's quite telling that when these locations are kind of found and sourced, that we make sure that they are safe and that they are up to standard. I was speaking to Nick Henderson, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Irish Refugee Council, and I think he made quite a salient point in that he said that even if people are able to evacuate a fire safely, they might lose very critical documents that they can use, that they're using for their asylum applications, but also they might lose personal belongings, and of course then there's the trauma of kind of having survived a fire. So I think it's definitely something that we should ensure that kind of anything that we use to house people is safe.
And can somebody dispute a fire notice? I mean, if you receive a fire notice, can you go back to court and can you dispute this in some way?
Yeah, you can. You can appeal the fire safety notice in court, and this did happen a couple of times. I mentioned the Air Power Hotel in Kildare.
Yeah.
The second fire safety notice that they received was actually disputed in court. Or they made an application to dispute it in court, but then 3 days before the hearing, the fire safety notice was withdrawn, with the local authority saying that they were satisfied that the work had been completed. And I suppose so it is possible for people to appeal these notices, and there is avenues for them if they feel like that the fire safety authority hasn't taken something into account or something like that.
Well, it's a most interesting piece, and as I said, very concerning indeed. Conor, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning.
Thanks a million.
Good morning to you. That's Conor O'Carroll there from the Journal Investigates, and that item is up there online if you want to follow that through. There's some extra detail in it as well. 1800 938 007. A listener on WhatsApp said this highlights the fact that this migration plan was all about making money with no concern for safety of the people that they are housing. It's all about wealth. Let's take a break. Back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tip Today. Now, Gus was in touch with us recently, and there was a couple of topics he would like to see highlighted on the show. He joins me now. Good morning to you, Gus.
Good morning, friend. How are you?
I'm well, and lovely to talk to you, Gus. A couple of things you wanted to discuss. The first of all is the notion of the clock changes for winter time and summertime and all of that. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, it's a pet subject of mine. I can't understand why we continue to change the clock every year. We had permission from Europe some time ago that we could not change it if we decided so. Now, the MAP, Sean Kelly, has been campaigning for years that we don't change it.
He has indeed.
I agree 1,000. I agree with him 1,000%, and I'd be going by the statistics. Last year there was 185 deaths on the road. That's up about 15 from the previous year. The two, we changed the clock on the bank holiday weekend in October, probably the 26th or 27th of October. Straight away, the road deaths increase. In November there was 21, in December there was 24. That's a quarter of all deaths on the road are in November and December. The clock
So you think there's a link there of some kind, do you?
I do indeed. It's the lack of light. The majority of the road deaths are between 4 and 8 o'clock in the evening. I mean, when you change the clock back, it becomes dark at 4 o'clock. It's desperate. And believe it or not, 22% of all deaths on the road are pedestrians, which is a very, very high figure.
Right.
Motorbikes are 60%.
And I'm not across it. Have there been studies around this?
Yes, they have. They have indeed. And if you go onto any of the sites, they will tell you exactly how many people have been killed each year. The best, going on what I'm saying there about the worst months of the year for fatalities.
Yeah.
In actual fact, they are November and December, the two darkest months of the year. The best one is June, which is the longest, There are the lowest fatalities in it. So that proves my point about light being a factor. Now, to me, I cannot understand why we still have to keep changing the clocks for the simple reason. I could understand it years ago when you had the farmers, they were hen milking all their cows, etc., etc. That no longer happens. They all have machinery now, etc. The same way with children going to school, right? Everyone walked. Now they're dropped by bus or by car. No one walking. So those are two of the things that are now.
And you know, while you were talking to me there, I just looked this up, and you did right. There was a bill back in 2012, the Brighter Evenings Bill, and it was proposed, I think, by the Road Safety Authority at the time. And there are some links between collisions, injuries, fatalities, and the changing of the clocks. Wow.
Definitely there is a link. And the funny thing about it was that the excuse they used, which was farcical, right, that, oh no, we couldn't have that. Belfast would have a different time to us. London would have a different time to us. Ridiculous. Let them have a different time if they wanted. That's their own business.
What are the problems around that? Is it to do with doing business and, you know, having
possibly, yes. Yeah, about doing business.
But you think what's more important is saving lives and...
Exactly.
Right.
And the funny thing about it, Frank, that I would say is we have a different time to Rome, we have a different time to Germany, etc. We could list out a lot of them.
Yeah.
Different time. And it doesn't come into the equation. Right? I mean, I cannot understand it at all. And what's annoying me altogether about it is, I've been raising this now for some time, and while a lot of people would agree with me, there's never anything done about it. Yeah. And we have the door now that we're going to recess now again for another 3 months, which I don't agree with either. They should be closing the same time as the schools. That's it in the story. But be that as it may. So when they come back in September, right, this will continue and this will continue again. And it's the same ding-dong every year. When I know for a fact that if you talk to any doctor in the morning, any doctor you can get any, our local GPs that you'll have on shortly, or within the next couple of days, Dr. Harold, you can ask him. The amount, life is the most important thing in our lives.
Yeah. It affects our mood. Greatly, for sure.
Yeah, everyone. It affects mental health of people. Darkness. And when you have to start closing your blinds at 4 o'clock in the evening, instead of having the extra hour, at least anyhow, one way you chop in the night. But it's a thing I believe myself that the stats are there. You can't deny them if you look at them.
Well, you make a very good point on that. Talk to me about some of the other issues that are of concern to you. Our reliance on fossil fuels. Tell me about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're talking. The first thing they're talking about the retrofitting of all the houses.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason an awful lot of the people can't get it done is because they can't afford. Because it's too dear.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
Basically. And my suggestion some time ago was that whatever the grant is, it might be 20,000, 30,000. You evaluate what each of them costs. That you give them a grant of 50% of it, and you give them an interest-free loan for the remainder of it.
Yeah. An
interest-free loan that has to be paid back over 20 years. Now, they would get their money back for the simple reason that the loan would be an attachment to the house. So no matter who would, if they died or what, that would have to be paid back. They're not going to lose money. Yes. They might use. I mean, to me, that way then, that would be an incentive for everyone to get their houses done. The majority of the people can't afford it. It's going to cost 80,000 to get it done, or whatever the case might be. The grant might be 30,000 or 40,000, just say. Yeah. But they can't afford to pay the 40,000. So I would give them the loan interest-free. And they say, right, okay, you have to pay us back now 3,000 a year. Or you could pay back more if you want that, if you could afford to do that, right? But at least the attachment would be on the house. Yeah. So if I died or anything like that, the money would have to be paid no matter who would buy it. So they wouldn't be out of pocket.
Well, you see, this is the kind of outside the box thinking that we need. I know the Social Democrats yesterday were advocating for the grant for solar, for example, to be doubled, and the like. Have you invested in these options yourself, Gus?
I haven't, because I'll tell you why now, right? I'm of the age variety, shall we say, and I did get it looked at, right? I did get it looked at it. And believe it or not, the man that came to me, very nice gentleman, he said, Gus, for what you'd save now at the moment, it would not pay you to get what I would be charging you. Now, this is a while back, right? I would be even suggesting that to save the government money, solar panels should be put in for nothing. For nothing.
For nothing.
No charge whatsoever. Yes. For no charge. Because simple reason now, at the end of the day, whoever will take over my house when I'm dead and gone, right? Well, the benefit will be there for those people, right? And as a taxpayer all my life and all of that, I've been contributing to that. I have no problem about anyone getting anything. But there are several different things that you can do. But the most important thing altogether about two things that you could solve. I would think myself that our public transport is brilliant. I actually think it is brilliant. I think CIE are actually doing a good job. But I would give them an awful lot more money to do a better job. I would increase our public transport, and I would decrease the amount of money that you're paying. My first thing was, if you were going from Cork to Dublin, right, on the train, right, 20 euros return maximum. Yeah. That's your price. Now, 20 euros wouldn't take you up to Mitchelstown.
And you think this would entice people to use public transport?
No doubt whatsoever it would. As a matter of fact, they said you'd have the trains full. That's right. I want the trains full. I say, for all buses, right, I would have a fiver returned in the buses. I would make it, I said, but they'd lose money. They wouldn't. More people would travel on the buses. All local ones, €1 or maximum, €1, get them on the bus. Give them an incentive to get out of their cars to get on the bus.
Of course, many people in rural Ireland, and particularly like myself, in out of the way places, it's very hard to use public transport all of the time. But you're saying make it cheaper, make it more accessible, is what you're saying.
For everyone, for everyone. Yeah. And the final thing I would say about our energy usage, right? I cannot understand the ESB at all. First of all, I have no problem, or anyone else has no problem, for the user paying for it. Yeah. But when I come out and I see my bill and they have a standing charge plus VAT on it.
I know, that really annoys
even though
people,
I might be using that, there should be no such thing as a standing charge.
But did you see over the last couple of days, we are the highest in terms of what we pay for electricity, the highest in Europe.
We're getting legally robbed. Yeah. That's what we are. We're getting robbed. And they have the cheek to come out and say, a national body, we made 20 million last year, we made 30 million last year.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. I want to just spend the last couple of minutes speaking on that third topic that you wanted to bring up. In terms of deciding what a child is that the point you're making?
Yes. I think it's farcical. And no, we have already. I could never consider a 2-year-old, which is a child, the same as a 17 or 18-year-old. Okay. 17-year-old, 16, because legally he becomes an adult at 18. I discovered I was listening to the news at 7 o'clock this morning on the radio, and we find that we have illegal immigrants coming in here claiming they were children. That's right, and they were actually adults. Yeah. You see? Yeah. I mean, to me, we have the farcical situation that, he can't be named because he's a child. If there's a court case in the morning, he's 17 years of age, he can't be named.
And you think that shouldn't be the case, is that it, Gus?
Well, of course it should be the case. I have no problem at all in saying, I would consider a child up to 12 years of age. That's what I would consider a child. After that, he's a teenager.
Right.
And there's an awful difference to say, there's an awful difference between a teenager and a child.
Right, so you wouldn't see a 13 or 14-year-old then as being a child, would you?
No, I wouldn't. No, right. He's a teenager. He's an advanced child, if we like to put it that way. Right, but he's not a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. That doesn't give him any extra rights or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. What I'm saying is that when people are, and I like to hear it. So there was a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old arrested in Derry, I think, for running fire bombs or whatever it was the other day. I didn't get it there, but at least they said their ages. Right? But when I hear people coming out saying this when I was a child, 17 years of age, he could be a father for all I know. He's not. The definition of a child, in my opinion, is a youngster that's going to primary school, up as far as the end of primary school. If he's going to the secondary, he's not a child.
Yeah, it's interesting because some people out there advocating that we bring down the voting age to 16, which would technically be the case then that children are voting. So I take your point.
Correct. You are spot on. I had the young lady speaking about that, and she was I think she was doing her leaving cert or something like that, right? Yeah. But she wanted to vote, but yet she's only a child.
Yeah.
but she doesn't consider herself a child. You know what I mean? I mean, I mightn't be putting it in the correct manner, but to me, we should have definitely a line between them, right? A baby is up to 4 years of age when she goes to school, right? From 4 to up to the end of primary, he's a child. After that, he's a teenager. Then, when he goes into the secondary, until he does his leaving cert, and he's an adult when he goes to university or so on.
Well, Gus, you've certainly caused a stir on our social media. Anyway, I see that on the screens in front of me here. So that's absolutely what we want. You look after yourself, Gus. Great to talk to you. I hope we can talk again in the.
And great to talk to you, Brandon. Thank you very much.
Got a minute back. That's Gus Ryan speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And of course, Leanne is producing the text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. Now, J.C. Buckley is a journalist and documentary filmmaker who worked near active combat zones in Ukraine since 2022 alongside soldiers, medical personnel, and indeed civilians. His work is based on personal experience under fire, documenting not only the destruction but also indeed the great resilience and dignity of those living in the midst of war. And he joins me now. Jay, good morning to you.
Very good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome indeed. Yours is a very interesting story. And before we speak about Ukraine, will you just tell me about you and your career before you headed to Ukraine, Jay?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in mental health. I think it's a very important issue. My residence is in Spain. I live in Spain. However, my mother was Irish and my father was British. But I live in Spain, and I've with time and experience, I understood that mental health is an important issue. And I've always been writing about that subject. I published my first book when I was 18 years old. So it's not that long ago, really, 6 years ago. And that was precisely about social equality and mental health. And that's what I've been focused on up until, of course, the war in Ukraine began.
You had your own issues around mental health. Will you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, of course. I was in hospital after a suicide attempt. I was in hospital for 6 months, recovering from my own mental battles. I lost both my parents at a very young age. I struggled with addiction and many other issues. I was homeless for a short while. I lost everything, and I began to become a little bit illicit in certain ways, and to doing things I shouldn't have done, and getting myself into trouble with the authorities. And it got to a point where I tried to take my own life. I went into hospital and decided that it was the right time to make a change in my life, and I did. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done.
And, because of that particular challenge and that journey, what made you decide then to go to a war zone?
Yeah, so I was actually in the hospital when Ukraine was invaded back in February 2022, 24th February 2022. And I was instantly kind of fixated on the invasion. I don't really understand the reason why. However, we were receiving reports of the atrocities and the war crimes that were being committed in Bucha, which is just outside of Kyiv, by the Russian military. And I grew very curious, and I wanted to see it with my own eyes and learn the truth myself. So I decided to go to Ukraine. I went there, and I had absolutely no intention of going to the war zone. I just wanted to document the war crimes and speak to people that lived under occupation and see where they were at, kind of mentally. And I ended up meeting some diplomats and meeting some soldiers and some volunteers, and they took me to the front lines, and here we are. It was an accident.
You must have been terrified, I presume, because I'm just thinking how I'd feel myself. You must have been terrified about going to a front line. I mean, where there is a possibility that you could have been hurt or you could have been killed, for God's sake.
Yeah, no, of course. People don't understand this. But for people who have been at war, I'm actually more scared of going now than I was back in 2022.
Why?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But if I explain, I think in 2022, I didn't realize the danger. I didn't realize how serious it actually was. And also in 2022, we were very focused on issues like missiles and artillery, and drones weren't really a problem. And then 2023 came, and it's now the main kind of use of weaponry is drones, and there's nothing really to protect you from that. And once one understands the dangers, understands the logistics and the geography of Ukraine and the situation on the battleground, you do become more fearful because you understand how dangerous it actually is.
Would you tell us about that experience at the front line? Because there's a friend of ours who comes on the programme regularly. He's a former member of the Irish Defence Forces, and he often makes the point that we hear, and rightly so, that we hear about the civilians who are who often die or are maimed in attacks, but rarely do we talk about the huge numbers of soldiers on the front line, young guys quite often, who are losing their lives. And I'd love your experience of that and your view on that.
So there's 880,000 soldiers that are covering the complete front line at the moment. And we're losing about, it's difficult to say, but around 500 soldiers on the Ukrainian side each day.
Wow.
You know, it's a complex situation where people ask me all the time, like, are they tired? Do they just want to end this?
Yeah.
And they actually don't. They're not. Of course, they're tired, but they're not willing to give up the territory. And people think as time passes, that as the war goes on, that it'll end up with the territorial divide. It's not the case, because you've got to bear in mind all these soldiers have seen their fellow comrades and friends and even family being killed precisely to preserve that territory. So even though they're tired, they're still very much motivated to not have to do that and not reach that agreement. So they keep fighting. They're absolute heroes. I think it's important to say, they're not just defending Ukraine. They're defending Ukraine, the Ukrainian identity, Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian traditions. They're also defending the gates of Europe. This isn't the invasion of Ukraine, it's the invasion of Europe. At first it was Georgia, now it's Ukraine, and the idea is to reestablish the old Soviet Union. So I can absolutely guarantee a country like Russia, who's invaded 19 countries in the last 70 years, is absolutely willing to continue wagering its war.
One of the things you said is it's not just their war, it's our war. Is that something you believe profoundly?
I don't believe it. I know it. It's absolutely true. As I say, Russia has invaded multiple countries in the last years. They have threatened us directly. There have been drones and missiles that have struck on NATO and European soil. When President Zelensky went to Ireland, you guys had issues as well. There were drones, that were unrecognized drones flying over the airport area the same day Zelensky arrived. We have in Spain, we have 2 cases of people being ex-politicians being murdered, Ukrainian politicians being assassinated by the Russians. And it is absolutely affecting our economy. The inflation partly is because of the war in Ukraine. Because if Ukraine falls or if Ukraine is suffering, it becomes an unsafe environment. I'm referring to Europe. Europe is now less safe than it was before. Therefore, prices have gone up, and it's affected our economy directly. I think that someone asked me actually in Dublin. I was in Dublin a few weeks ago, and they said, "Why should we use our tax money to support Ukraine?" I said, "Well, if you don't want to do it for the right reasons, which is because they're being absolutely slaughtered, you can do it for the selfish reasons. Military aid is not charity; it's insurance." It's an insurance that guarantees our own security and safety. It guarantees that this won't grow any bigger. It won't be a direct threat to us. We won't have to send our soldiers because, the second it hits a NATO country, we're all involved. And it will actually help our economy.
Of course, one of the big things from an Irish point of view, I'm not sure how much you're across it is, but I mean, it's how we view ourselves here as being a neutral sovereign country, and that is very important to Irish people. While we've done a tremendous amount, I think, for the Ukrainian people, I think we've spent $3.5 billion over the last few years in terms of looking after them when they come here, and we still view ourselves in terms of being a neutral, and that's important to us. I guess you can understand that, Jay.
No, I understand it. I completely disagree with it. Neutrality is stupid. It really is. Neutrality, if we see a situation at school, for example, where a child is being bullied, and we don't do anything about it, do we call that neutrality? If we see a man hitting his wife, do we call that neutrality? If we see a guy planning to bomb a school, do we call that neutrality if we just stay quiet? So why, if a man bombs thousands of schools, civilian infrastructure, hospitals, maternity wards, and kills and slaughters and tortures innocent people all across Ukraine, how can we call that neutrality? Neutrality isn't something we can accept under terrorism. And this is terrorism, and it's genocide. There's no other term for it. So anyone who's neutral isn't actually neutral. They're benefiting Russia and supporting the genocide, even if they don't want to. So neutrality, I think, is something that's absolutely unacceptable and stupid.
Well, a lot of Irish people would disagree profoundly with you on that, and would point to, as I say, the huge amount of aid and help and non-lethal aid that we would have supplied to Ukraine over the years. But then again, I suppose that is a different discussion, maybe for another day. Can I ask you how the Ukrainians, particularly the soldiers, viewed you, Jay, in terms of you being a journalist and a documentary maker? Was there a bit of suspicion at the start when you are there? Did they see it as voyeuristic, maybe, until you made your feelings clear to them? Was that an issue?
Yes, of course. I'll ask that question. Just to backtrack quickly, I understand many Irish may disagree with my last comment, but I will say that this isn't a case of opinion, and Ireland isn't exactly doing a favour to Ukraine. Ukraine is defending Europe, and they are making Europe a safer country. A safer continent, my apologies for the error. Sending humanitarian and non-lethal aid is, of course, a help, and it's much appreciated by the Ukrainians. But what the Ukrainians are doing to defend our territory all across this continent makes us, become massively in debt to them. And I think we should absolutely respect the soldiers on the front line who are doing that.
Mm.
In regards to your last question, I appreciate that question. Of course, getting press credentials is extremely difficult. The first time I couldn't get very close to the front line at all. I was with mainly volunteers instead of military. I think as time goes by, you get to kind of earn the trust of certain battalions. If you work with the same people all the time, you earn their trust. You have a massive background check, of course. Bear in mind, in Ukraine, to get anywhere, you take a long time, not just because of the distance, because Ukraine is a massive country, but also because there are checkpoints everywhere. So you won't get anywhere near the front line unless you have the right documentation. Yes. Luckily, I got that documentation. And, I've been working very hard in Ukraine, and we've been working with different battalions across all of the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. And, it was difficult, but now we're there. Ukraine is a place where freedom of press is absolutely accepted. In fact, they're number 57 in the world at the moment. They've gone up, so just over 100 points in the last few years. Ukraine is very grateful that the press go there, especially towards the frontline areas. They treat you like absolute heroes, unlike other countries that are at war who try and avoid showing you or avoid you filming or seeing certain things. They're very open to us showing the truth, because they've got nothing to hide and they are being attacked, and they want the world to see and understand this. So it's actually quite easy to do my job.
You are in the process, I understand, of fundraising because you want to make another documentary. Is that the case, Jay?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm currently on a world tour. I've been to 10 countries so far, and we've been presenting my documentary and my book, which we'll speak about shortly. And we are fundraising, of course. The aim is not just to go back to Ukraine to film a documentary. We actually want to deliver a bunch of humanitarian aid to the front lines. We'll be joining a team of people that evacuate civilians from the frontline areas as the front line, of course, shifts. And, of course, as we do this, we will be filming, and we'll be making another documentary that we can present all across Europe to keep Ukraine's voice alive. Because, helping Ukraine isn't always just about fundraising or humanitarian aid or bearing arms. Sometimes it's just talking about Ukraine, keeping their voice alive.
Tell me about your book and its availability, Jay.
Absolutely. So my book is called, the documentary, is called Voices at the Front.
Yeah.
And the book is called Beyond the Rubble. That's Beyond the Rubble. And that is available. We are online. So anyone who puts in, just in Google, Beyond the Rubble by Jay Buckley, it will pop up. They can purchase it. And we ship to everywhere except Russia and Belarus for obvious reasons. And yeah, the book is an interesting book. And of course, as the writer, I'm biased. But it's different in the sense that it tells you the story of Ukraine from the fall of the Soviet Union onwards, and gives a mix of my personal views and opinions, the political side of things, and the full history of why the war began and how this all happened. People understand that in 2022 the war started, but they don't really know what happened back in 2014 with the Revolution of Dignity and the annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass. And without understanding that, it's very difficult to understand the invasion of 2022.
Finally, can I ask you about where the Americans are concerned? I mean, Donald Trump initially told us that he'd be able to end this war in 24 hours. God knows that hasn't worked out. But what about where the Americans are concerned and their influence on this, or lack of, as the case may be?
Yeah, so I actually, when Trump was, Biden was still president, and it's actually in the book. There's a photo of this copy of this article in the book. I actually said that the war is not going to end in 24 hours. It's going to be impossible, And Donald Trump said that. He was president before, and there was already a war in Ukraine. It was in Donbass. It was a much smaller scale war. If he couldn't stop that, how is he going to stop a full scale invasion? I think. The issue with the USA is complex. I think us Europeans have realised that we cannot depend on the United States. The United States is the most unreliable ally we have. And, they complain about the military aid that the US is sending. Trump is very bipolar with his decisions and his comments and his remarks. However, in 1994, the Budapest Memorandum was signed. So the Budapest Memorandum basically was a security guarantee from both Russia, the US, and Great Britain to Ukraine, security guarantee. And in exchange for that security guarantee, Ukraine would give up its nuclear arsenal, which was the third strongest in the world. So the US isn't helping just because they want to. They have to, because they signed that agreement. Now Ukraine is unable to defend itself with nuclear arms because of that agreement. If they had nuclear weapons, this invasion would never have happened. But they gave it up, and the US has failed Ukraine massively. Russia has, of course, completely disobeyed that agreement, and the UK has done exactly the same. So it's a complex situation. The Americans are now focused on waging war in other countries and have completely lost touch with the situation in Ukraine. But what I do think the good thing that has happened from this is that I think Europe has woken up. We've realized that we need to grow stronger. We need our own strong militaries, our own independence. We don't need to rely so much on the USA because they're unreliable.
Most interesting conversation, Jay, and we wish you well. And when you're heading back, we wish you safety as well in Ukraine. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much.
That is J.C. Buckley there, who is a war reporter, indeed, documentary maker as well. How do you feel about that conversation? Love your view on that. 1800 938 007. We'll take a break and we're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
James in New Win was on to question how much has Jay profited personally from writing about dying Ukrainians. Well, I understand he wouldn't have profited very much. I think he sort of has a modest enough lifestyle, I understand, and modest book sales as well. So I'm not sure that he would have profited greatly from that, James. This week on the programme, we've been taking a trip down memory lane. We've been remembering some of the great characters who brought life and colour and personality to our towns and villages right across the county. Well, Councillor Shamie Morris has been looking back, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Shamie.
Good morning, Fran. Fran, it's very hard to take a lecture on neutrality from a man that comes from a country that invaded and colonised and raped and pillaged their way across the world.
This would be because he's British. Is that it, Shamie?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's his opinion. We might disagree completely with him, but it's his opinion on that.
And by the way, we're not a neutral country. When our local airport is being used to traffic people from America to take them over, put them into prison, where the American soldiers are using Shannon, where American jets are using Shannon Airport. We're not a neutral country, far from it.
But however, I mean, in any poll that's been taken over the years, neutrality is important to us. Though governments might have been sort of traipsing all over that notion, but neutrality is important to us, Shamie.
It is, but we're not neutral. If you look at Shannon Airport, there's thousands of American troops. Maybe they're going to Iran for a party or something, but there's thousands of American troops a week used at Shannon Airport. There's American war machines used at Shannon Airport. There's people being arrested illegally in countries across the world from Afghanistan being trafficked through Shannon Airport. We've consistently done this as a country, pretending we're one thing when in fact we're another. So
is the time that we stood up, Shamie, and said we're not neutral? Is that? I mean, would that be the honest? Would that be the honest thing to do?
I remember going to Shannon Airport and see the American troops drinking pints inside and wearing hats with cameras on them. And there was an American war machine attack there a few weeks ago. That just didn't fall out of the sky. I mean, it's consistently happening. So Irish people, we love to look the other way and pretend one thing when we're in fact another. Yeah, well, it's like the nonsense around the non-lethal aid. I mean, what do we get receipts back to say the money was spent on? I don't know. But that's it. We as a country love to do this. I mean, what do we call the war in the north? Because we don't call things what they are. Yeah, well, the Second World War was the emergency, wasn't it? It was. Yeah, the emergency, and the war in the north was the trouble. Yeah, yes. So look, come here. if we're going to be supporting illegal wars, I don't want anything to do, but unfortunately everybody seems to look the other way.
All right, well that's for sure. Tell me about some of the characters that you remember from Nenagh, Shamey, because as a postman you must have bumped into all these people all of the time, did you?
You know, you see more when you're growing up, and you see, you know, when you kind of grow up with people. There was a gentleman in Nenagh called Roddy Boland. He's so well known. There was a Facebook page put up about him. Rest in peace, Roddy Boland. There's a pub in Dublin called after him. He used to go around. He was a very strong Republican. Roddy would go around the town selling on Publix. Now the Publix could be 4 weeks out of date, and it didn't matter whether you wanted a beret or not. You were buying it after. But Roddy wore a beret, a suit, and a pair of Wellingtons with the suit. But he was an extraordinary character.
Yeah.
There was a fantastic picture. I couldn't find it to show to Leanne of Roddy Boland sitting in a cafe in Nenagh under a no smoking sign with a cigarette in his mouth, a lit cigarette in his mouth, and that was the type of person Roddy did. And even the mention of Roddy Boland would bring across many memories of people. And of course, if you mention Margaret Thatcher in front of him, the air would be filled with profanities. But every people knew how to rise him. But Roddy lived to be a great age.
Yeah.
He moved into the Manor Nursing Home in Nenagh, and he had his own smoking room in the Manor Nursing Home. You know, people like Shane McGowan, and from Shane McGowan to Jerry Adams came to see him. That's how much of a character.
Was he a friend of your dad's?
He was a friend of my dad's. Actually, look, he was involved with the Republican movement, as my father was in his day. And look, I remember Roddy going to my sister's wedding and with a beautiful suit on him and a pair of Wellingtons underneath him. So that was the type of character Roddy was. You know, people took them for what they were. They didn't get insulted or annoyed by them. He was a great man also for tracing your relations, even if you didn't want your relations to be traced, particularly in pubs. I remember one day Ken Hogan scored a goal against Aero. He was playing for Lowe at the time. And at the time, Lowe didn't beat Aero many times, and we came back into Eamon Ryan's pub, and Roddy appeared over to be as loud as he could. Ken Hogan is your cousin, and I tried to pretend he wasn't at the time because we were shocked at the defeat. But that's the type of character he was.
That's great, yeah. What about some others that spring to mind, Shamey?
I also remember Christy Kelly when I was growing up. Christy used to go around the town with a smile on his face from ear to ear on his bike. And again, he'd arrive into church, particularly late night church, with his bike. He was a lovely man that used to cycle around the town. And of course, there was the famous Digger Stanley then. Digger was a great man for telling yarns in the pub over the years. And again, I never heard his story. We were sick and tired of Tony Barr beating us in county finals and North finals and whatever. And the Tony Barr lads, of course, would arrive into town to slag Digger and a few more. And they're all saying about Nenagh, so you can't win a county final. And Digger said, look at the side of China, and there's no hurlers in China either. That's the type of character Digger was. But we had great time for characters then days, and I don't think we have the time for them anymore to listen to them because, you know, they were all behind it all, they were all interesting people, and this I feel accepted them because they were part of Nenagh. They told stories about Nenagh, and I don't know if we have the time to listen to them. Sorry, maybe our young people don't have the time to listen because everybody's rushing now.
Yeah, and what about, you know, younger people coming up? Are there still characters emerging, do you think, Shamey, or is that all gone by the wayside now?
We will always have characters. I mean, you know, you'll always have the character in the dressing room. You know, every team has a character. Yeah, you'll always have characters, but they're not as, you know, you meet characters in your day probably in public houses or down the streets. And public houses are kind of dying out a little bit. Unfortunately, they are dying out a lot, and young people aren't drinking that much. Believe it or not, they're not drinking in the pubs as much anyway. They might be drinking at home or whatever. So you don't come across the characters as much anymore. But you know, there'll always be characters, particularly Irish people. Irish people are very witty and very well able to tell stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, we've been getting a great reaction since Leanne kicked this off in some way. Is it important that we remember them and talk about them? And
I mean, look, come here. The mere mention of Robbie Boland this morning, I will bring back memories to people.
Sure.
And as I said, there was a Facebook page set up in his name. Rest in peace, Robbie Boland. There's not many people with a pub called after. Roddy had an establishment in Nenagh. It was a pub one time. but a local lad, Kieran O'Mara, who has a pub in Terranura, bought the whole front of it, and that pub then became Roddy Boland's Dublin, and it's a place where many people will often go for a drink up there. So, he's fine and remembered. Look, again, you have someone on there talking about the character in Clonmel. Every town and village has them, and we're lucky to have them. But Irish people have great wit about them in terms of. I remember growing up actually, and you'd be down the street and lads would be telling me stories. Sure, the stories would be as tall as the person telling them, but they entertained you. I remember coming out of the cinema. If anyone remembers the Kung Fu film years ago, it used to be dangerous to come out of the cinema after for some kind of draw Kung Fu kick at you from a distance. But I remember standing in the street listening to lads telling stories, and of course the stories were as tall as the person telling them, but you listen to them. It was part of what you grew up with.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic? Lovely memories there indeed. Will you tell me about yesterday, because there was that Oireachtas members briefing, the River Shannon Protection Alliance. You were there with a bunch of people. Shamie, how did that go?
First of all, I want to thank Sharon Keoghan, Senator Sharon Keoghan. She organised it for us to go up there, and she sent out invitations to TDs and senators to come and listen to us. And as we were putting the presentation together on May the 5th, Ishgaran actually made finally gave information to the CRU on their leakage, what they've done with leakage. And we weren't surprised, but we were astonished in one way that they admitted that leakage rates have gone up in 2022, 23 and 24. So for a fact, they're not on top of leakage at all. They're only replacing 0.4% of leaks of pipes in the country, which means it would take 200 years at that rate to fix pipes. So they're making no input into leaks at all. But most importantly, yesterday the message we wanted to carry yesterday to the TDs and senators that turned up was the fact that this is a high cost, high risk project. And also, but more importantly, we wanted to tell them that where they're taking the water from is a very, very stressed area. We haven't got the water. We actually presented a picture to Willie O'D. Willie O'D was at it, and we showed him a picture of a drought situation in September last year. And believe it or not, the River Shannon from a drought situation 8 months of the year. We might think we get a lot of rain, but we don't. The Midlands are getting less rain than they used to. In fact, the rainfall has moved to the east of the country, and so the River Shannon is under stress, drought stress, 8 months of the year. And we showed a picture of a trickle of water going into Limerick City from the Lower Shannon, which is where they're taking the water from, and it was a picture paints 1,000 tales. It really showed the fact that we haven't got extra water to give. In fact, we're in trouble with water in the Partian region. So I think that they were shocked at how little water we have, but they were also shocked at the amount of money that's been spent in this project. For instance, the 160 farmers or something that have been paid already for a project that hasn't got planning permission nor an abstraction license. And I don't think they're going to get them. But they were astonished also to find out that Ishgaran themselves, their own plants have been poisoning water up and down the country, and they're being fined minuscule. There was a case there recently where they were pumping raw sewage for 6 whole weeks into Key into the river into the sea up there, and every monitor that they had was turned off. So another message we want to give them yesterday, we said the EPA has absolutely no teeth. They can fine someone up to between 1,000 and 10,000. So that wouldn't cover up for the damage that's been done. But we put a very good case to them that Dublin is short of water, and we haven't got the water to give to people. So I think we kind of got that message across to them yesterday. They hadn't heard our side of things. For instance, where the narrative there that Ishgaran have been given is that they're only taking 2% of the water. When in fact at stress times they're taking 38% of the water. And that's 8 months of the year they'll be taking 38% of the water. So that's not sustainable, Frank.
And there's also that notion, that there isn't an alternative to taking the the water from the Shannon. Seamus, did you get that across yesterday that there are alternatives?
We gave them all the look. We came to tell them to give them alternatives, not just go up there and say, listen, you can't do this. We gave them the alternatives, whether it be Fuka, the River Slaney, groundwater, desalination. But I also did say to them, this plan was drawn up in 2007 when the world was an extremely different place. COVID changed all of that plan, where people are working from home, and I would say 30% of the people that were working in Dublin at the time haven't returned. They're actually working from home, where you could see whole office blocks empty in Dublin now. You know, so this thing was designed at a time when the world was a different place. But you know, it's madness, friend. And I suppose the point I want to say to me yesterday, who's going to shout stop to this? You know, the Children's Hospital started us for 800 million. It's 2.5 billion at the moment. This project, the Shannon pipeline project, as I call it, started at 700 million. They've given it a budget now of 10 billion, and it won't stop at that. But the damage that it will do to the lower Shannon is incredible.
What's next for you and the group? What's next?
What's next, Brian, is the USB are going to make a submission for abstraction license to the EPA. We'll be taking that on. We'll put in a submission into that. I can't see a license being given, by the way, an abstraction license, based on the fact that the environmental report that Ishgale did, the 1067 environmental report, page 6 environmental report, is totally insufficient in terms of the type of environment you're dealing with. We will certainly be submission to that. What's next for us is, look, it's with a commission on Panola. They reckon they're going to give an indication by June. I can't see it happening by June, Fran. We just have to wait for that now. But certainly something we as a group have set ourselves up professionally now. We've the group now is logged as kind of a company, and it's our intention to fight for our rivers. 500 rivers. 10 years ago were in good quality. There's only 20 rivers in the country, in the whole country, in good quality now, and they're being poisoned by everyone from our local authorities to Ishgale.
All right, Seamus, thanks for your time this morning. We'll continue to follow that saga. Thanks very much indeed. Councillor Seamus Morris speaking to us there on a number of different issues. We'll take a break. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now listen around to Leanne to say, why is Jay allowed to come on Tip Today with that opinion? I'm very angry now. Well, there you go. It's an alternative opinion, and if you're angry, sure, isn't that great? Isn't that what it's all about? You listen to something on the radio and you do what I do quite often. I'm shouting back at the radio because it's a different opinion to yours, but it's allowed to be broadcast. You know, it's somebody else's view on the world, and who knows, it might make you think about things differently. I don't know. Rhodey was a great character, says somebody else. Saturday night wasn't the same without Rhodey going around the pubs with Unpublic. He'd always take a glass of Guinness and he would trace your family as well. And our friend Conor Reilly was on to say, Rhodey Boland also sold Unpublic outside of Nenagh. I remember him well in my childhood, appearing around Round Hill on a Saturday night with his bundle of papers. And he also showed up with the Easter Lilies on Holy Saturday night. A mighty character altogether, says Connor. Barry was on to say, but if we changed the clocks, the power companies would be taking a hit, Fran. Well, there you go. Now, before the break there, we were speaking to Councillor Seamus Morris about a number of things. We were talking about local characters and faces that used to light up the streets of Nenagh, and other towns and villages as well. Well, Bonnie Hayes, great friend to the show over years, has been remembering some characters in Cloughjordan, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Bonnie.
Morning, friend. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Lovely to talk to you, Bonnie. You have some memories of some great characters around Cloughjordan. Oh, there you go. Have we lost her?
No, they've all left us. But I remember one guy here, he had a car. I think it was a Mercedes he had, and there was no driver's door in it. And this is at a time now when seatbelts weren't enforced or anything like that. It wasn't necessary to have a seatbelt, so it's very dangerous. But he'd wrap a blanket around himself in the front seat and drive around for himself. Yeah, but the sergeant stopped him one day, and he said, "You want to do something about that?" And Ned was in. Ned, you want to do something? Get a door for that. Look, Sergeant. He says, "It's no business of yours." He says, "How many doors I have on my car?" He says. But that's yeah. But there was another guy then, Paul. Paul was a great character altogether. Paul, could suss out a situation in a pub as quick as anyone and get a few pints for himself. So he came in one night into Cloughjordan and went into a pub and ordered a pint and was drinking his pint, but it was very quiet. Normally he wouldn't be that quiet. So lads around him were a bit concerned. Why? Someone said, "Well, Paul, is everything all right?" Like, mm-hmm. Oh, he says, "My mother is dead." He says, "Oh God!" The boys were very shocked. So they all got around him and sympathised with him, and they bought him pint after a pint. And the night went on. It came near closing time, and someone said to Paul, "Is there any arrangements like? Is there any arrangements made?" And he says, "For what?" He says, "For your mother's funeral." I said, "My mother died 13 years ago." You got a free night's drinking out of him. But the same fella, he was kind of a farming hand for two elderly ladies.
Yeah.
And he went home one night. It was very, very frosty night. He would be walking a lot of the way. He walked a few miles outside Cloughjordan. He got home anyway, and he went in the door and into the kitchen, and there was an old black range in the kitchen, the old black Stanleys, I'm sure you often remember them.
Sure, yeah.
And very cold, but one of the old ladies was up, and it was very cold. She had a fire down, but she had her 2 feet in the oven, keeping them warm. And Paul told someone after it was only between me, it was ever in the oven. Oh, he was a great character.
Weren't these guys? Weren't they very witty, Bonnie? Hadn't they great natural wit?
It was natural wit. They never had to think. They never miss a beat when they'd be saying something. When you'd be telling you, it would just come instantly and naturally from them.
Yeah. And to spin yarns and tell stories as well. They were just natural entertainers, I suppose.
They were, and like I heard a small bit of shamey on there beforehand, and every time it was told there was a few yards added to it,
Mm.
But these guys they were fabulous entertainers, like.
Yeah.
And I mean, sorry, Frank.
No. I was just going to say, are we losing them? Are they being replaced in any way? Are there characters emerging?
Jamie made that point as well. He thinks they are. I don't know, not as good or not as natural anyway, friend. A few young fellas maybe here and there, but again, and I'm not coming down with technology and all that, friend, has a lot to do with we don't entertain or we don't self-entertain ourselves like we used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose.
That's the thing, friend.
Yeah.
You very seldom hear anyone whistling nowadays. I mean, years ago, fellas could whistle. You'd see fellas coming on bicycles and they'd be whistling. You know what I mean?
Oh, they were fantastic.
The nearly gone too, hasn't it?
And what a shame indeed. You're bringing me back great memories now. There was a particular neighbour of ours in Dominic Street, and when you'd walk down Dominic Street in those days, there was a reverb on the street because there was two high walls there. And there was a guy, I better not name him, but there was a guy who used to whistle in perfect pitch, beautifully, every morning, and you would hear him a mile away. It was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, some fellas had a great heart. That was a great heart. A nice whistler was absolutely beautiful. Yeah,
you're right about that. We don't hear it anymore for fear that people might think us sexist. Why aren't we talking about women characters as well? Were there characters? Were there female characters?
I don't know, Fran. I haven't any. When Leanne contacted me the other day, I was trying to think, and all the lads, the people I come up with here were all fellas.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were, friend. Of course there were.
Yeah.
There were women who were in the same boat. There were, of course, there were. There were there too. But off the top of my head, I don't have any at the minute.
Right, well, we put it out there and maybe see if that brings back some memories to people. Is it right that we remember them and that we talk about them and that we share their stories, Bonnie?
It is. I remember, friend, I was in Cloughjordan here early December. It was turning on of the Christmas lights, and I was helping Santa and a few other things, and a few of us got together afterwards, and we went into one of the local pubs there and there was about 4 of us together, and we spent over 2 hours talking about all those characters, and everyone had said about different fellas, and it was the best 2 hours. We absolutely broke our hearts laughing for 2 hours talking about those guys, and that's what we spent our full 2.5 hours at.
Yeah, has education played into the fact that maybe we don't have as many of them anymore? Because often these guys, they weren't hugely educated, but they were smart and they were quick and they were witty. And,
Yeah, it probably has, Fran. It probably has. Like I said, it goes back to we kind of self-entertained, and those guys either made up stories or maybe it started out with something small and they added yards to it that went on. But it was a gift. It was a gift they had. And you go back, Fran, and think of the great in Shanachie, Eamon Kelly.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I mean, Eamon Kelly was such a talented man. I saw him on stage myself from time to time. He was, you can still get him up on YouTube there. But I don't know, Fran, would the young people today, can they understand, would they relate to what he's talking about, you know?
Yeah, and if you look at all of John B. Keane's work, of course, that reflected some of the great characters, didn't it? Of
course it did, Fran, sure. That's how he wrote his plays. These characters probably came into the pub, or he met them around Listowel or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It had to happen like that, and I think the same happened with Sean O'Casey in his time.
For sure.
Oh God, yeah, he met the likes of the Joxers, and those fellas were around Dublin. And Dublin had great characters, you know, we all heard about them time. There was great characters with great scenes and great stories came from all different fellas too, you know.
Yeah, and again reflected by people like Miles Nagopolian and all of that, and reflected beautifully by them.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm delighted we're remembering them, and we're getting such a lot in on this. We might continue the conversations over a period of days. Bonnie, it's a pleasure to talk to you as always. Thank you for your time this morning.
Oh yeah, keep at it, Fran. We love to hear those stories, and God bless and thanks.
Thanks, good Bonnie. That's the great Bonnie Hayes there from Cloughjordan with some memories this morning. Listen, I want to say, how dare Seamie Morris come on the radio, and his first comment criticising the British. When I listened to Jay Buckley on your show, I was just waiting for someone to bring up his nationality. And of course, again, what happened to Ireland back in the day just because he criticised Ireland. So tired of listening to people like Seamie. We can never go forward when so many people keep looking to the past. Well, there you go now, I'm sure. Seamie is suitably chastised after that. 083 311 3311. News and information's on the way.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. Thanks very much indeed for that, Pat. Now it is time to continue on with our story of Ireland, and John G. O'Dwyer is with me in studio. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning indeed, Fran.
And good to see you today, and thanks very much indeed for coming into us as always. Will we start in about 1831, a Catholic Church gaining control of the primary schools, and how pivotal that was, I suppose, John?
I think you have to look on this, it was pivotal, and you have to look on the end of the 19th century. very little political change, but massive social change. The Ireland of the 1830s compared to the Ireland of the 1890s would be almost unrecognisable, and the population would have been down to almost half of what it was at that stage. Huge change. But what had happened was, we go back to the penal laws, and what the British had tried to do in Ireland was completely deny Catholics education, any education. The British model would have been, if you carried it to its logic, that no one of the 7 million Catholics in Ireland would have been able to read or write. That's what it would have been.
And what was behind that? To keep people down?
Keep it down, that they could not threaten, because they were in a majority, that they could not economically or educationally threaten their ascendancy in Ireland. That's basically it. You had to keep them under control. And when you deny people education, as you see, if we jump forward, when governments brought in relatively free university education, we'll say in the 1960s, what did they end up? People became educated. Then they realised, hey, we won't stand for this anymore. And you get 1968, you get the campaign against, we'll say, Vietnam, get the campaign to Northern Ireland, People's Democracy. That all came out of Queen's University, because for the first time the nationalist community had access there. But so that would have been the reason. But then when Catholic emancipation came along, the idea was that you would have schools here, that you would have a pre-primary education that would be free to everyone. The English government then decided, we'll be fair about this, not Protestant, not Catholic, non-denominational. And the Catholic Church almost had a conniption. That's the simple fact about it. Whatever Catholic Church will concede, they will never concede on education. They see it as crucial. They always want to control the education system. And I mean, I think now, I'm not up to date on what's happening, but I mean, that is still, I think, a live issue.
A huge issue. Even in fact, last week in the programme we were talking about, what about the Irish language at this point?
And that was it. Really, a lot of people say the famine ended the Irish language, but really that didn't help. It was a very big disadvantage, but what really did for it was the national school system. Now, the national school system was set up. The Catholic Church said, we won't cooperate unless it's our Catholic schools. And so the model was set up in 1831, which one did you wanted, but they had to concede it, that the model we still have today, where most schools in Ireland, the priest is in fact the manager and the bishop is the patron. That was set up. But the interesting thing is, although the Catholic Church had so much control over the schools at that stage, they never lobbied to have the Irish language included. In fact, in their schools, which they controlled, children were regularly punished if they came into an Irish-speaking household and spoke it there. So
it was the tally stick. Do you remember?
Well, I don't remember it, unfortunately, but I remember hearing of it. Yes, that kind of thing. So that plus the famine killed the language. Well, what's interesting is the Catholic Church never really lobbied or not saw it in any way important to have the Irish language.
Why?
I don't have. It could be that they felt happy enough that they had asked for one important thing and got control of the schools. Maybe they weren't. I said they just weren't too interested. Remember, if you go back to Daniel O'Connell, a fluent Irish speaker, he actively, this was the time of O'Connell, he actively discouraged people from speaking Irish because he said it was the language of poverty. You've got to learn English to get on with yourself. And I would say then, O'Connell was huge then, those kind of ideas would have leaked through the Irish, we'll say the great nationalistic revival at the end of the 19th century was a long way off, and I think Irish was associated with poverty.
And take it on for me then to providing higher education for Catholics then, because of course we had Trinity, but Catholics were banned from it.
Absolutely, then. So when you move on from there then, the second level education system, Britain didn't set up that. That was a private system in the 19th century, but the British government are happy enough because the Catholic Church are doing it at low cost. So you had the foot soldiers then of the Catholic Church, the Mercy Order, the Presentation Order, the Christian Brothers, the Presentation Brothers, the Brigidines. And they had a virtual, apart from a few Protestant schools, they had a virtual monopoly on the education of all Catholic children in Ireland. There was absolutely no choice. But where they ran into a small bit of a problem, it was when it came to the universities. The British government wanted to set up non-denominational universities. You know, we needed more universities in Ireland. So what they did was they set up 3 Queen's colleges: Queen's University Belfast, still there; Queen's College Galway, now UCG; Queen's College Cork, which is UCC. But the Catholic Church, even though they were non-denominational, didn't like it. They called them godless colleges. They wanted to control them, and when they couldn't, they set up then, and this comes from the Synod of Thurles, which is where we said that the last day, where the Catholic Church organised itself into a powerful top-down model, and they set up their own university in Dublin called the Catholic University, and today we know that as UCD.
And tell me some of the laws around. They could get into Trinity, my understanding, but they need a special permission. Was that?
Yeah, that was it.
Was that it at the time?
That persisted. I mean, you know, they hung on a long time. I went to Trinity in 1979, and it was only 9 years after the actual law. You know, a lot of Catholics went there anyway. Yeah, but McCabe in Dublin banned any Catholics from going there. He wanted them to go to UCD, and all the important, even up to that time, all the important like philosophy and ethics and all of those. The professors were nearly all Catholic priests. You know, Archbishop O'Connell, I think, lectured in ethics out there. He became Cardinal O'Connell. Yeah. So, you know, the influence went on for quite a long time. As I say, you're still debating how much influence the church should have, but that all goes back to 1831.
It's interesting. The IRB then, in about 56, a secret revolutionary organisation, but again, we use the word pivotal, wasn't it? Very important.
Very important. And the one thing that's interesting about the Catholic Church, I always think, they had enormous power. So they could say, to go out in a parish and say, we're having a mission next week, we want everybody in every week at 7 o'clock in there, and the church would be full. They could go out to say, I'm afraid your daughter may be pregnant at the moment, she can't stick around here, bad example, you've got to send her off to a mother and baby home, and it would be done. They come out and say to the Republicans, lay down your arms. Will they do it? Not on your life. And that is one of the things. So there's always this tension in Irish history between the physical force men and the church.
Yes.
And in general, the church is allied with the British government. So they kind of look at it this way: my enemy's enemy is my friend. In other words, that's how they would say it.
Interesting. And of course, excommunication was the great weapon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, some of them didn't really care. I mean, we're jumping forward a lot now, but some didn't seem to care.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people will say Tom Barry. He was actually in hospital in Cork. He was actually in a Catholic hospital. When he came out, he found that Coonahan, the Bishop of Cork, had excommunicated him, you know. So that kind of thing was there. I mean, it was all forgotten about, but probably technically there was a blanket excommunication as well. So you could say that maybe De Valera was excommunicated as well, but that was all forgotten, and he was soon, you know, they were all hugged.
John Charles forgave him, I would imagine. The IRB, were they Fenians?
They were, but they were Fenians in America. And we have a new thing coming on now. For the first time, you have a diaspora in America, and they're becoming increasingly influential. Now, America wasn't a particularly important country then, but he's becoming more important, and gradually the British are gradually having to look over at public opinion in the United States, particularly the powerful public opinion of the Catholics there, and they are a new ally. Now, they do support a rising in 1866. Some of these risings, I can never figure them out. What exactly was the end game? What did they want? Sometimes it just seems a bit like Trump going into
there was no
what
plan.
The hell else you want, you know?
Yeah.
And so you don't know. It was hard to say, but they did have a rising here in Ireland. Some of the Fenians in America tried to invade Canada. Nothing really worked. There was only a few skirmishes here in Ireland. But that is the important thing to remember. It waxes and wanes, but there is always, the physical force men are always there. If you go back to history in Irish history, they're still there today. I think about a week ago, there was a car bomb sent into a police station. So they're still there. At the moment, they're flying under the radar. They were flying above the radar during the H-Block protests, during 1960, 1921, and during the risings. But they're always there. They're always influential, and they often infiltrate.
And even though these risings often failed. It did keep nationalism alive, though, and was that really what was behind?
Yeah, well, I suppose what it kept alive was republicanism. Nationalism was generally at that stage seen as the Irish Parliamentary Party, and what they wanted was home rule for Ireland.
Yes.
That's what they wanted. Now, the physical force men were on the other side, generally never would have enough to get elected, but they believed in a revolution to set up a 100% Irish Republic, and that's the difference between the two. But right through the 19th century, they're always there, they're always in the background, but they never threatened the Irish Parliamentary Party. In fact, the Irish Parliamentary Party becomes so powerful at that stage that very often nobody contests against them. You know, anyone could. It's not like the old rotten boroughs, anyone could, but no one felt any chance. And in general, anyone in the IRB would not stand for election. So it's a fascinating time.
Isn't it indeed? And this was a fascinating time, as you say, because of the social change, and part of that would have been the end of the payments to the Church of Ireland, for example.
Absolutely.
That was about, what, 1869, was it?
Yeah, that's the disestablishment of the church. So the Church of Ireland, the Anglican Church, is no longer the state church, and that means then people are not have to pay tithes. And probably in terms of noticeability, the rising of 1866 or not paying the tithes, most people have noticed not paying the tithes. They said if one or the other will have it. But I think a huge thing that is massively missed in Ireland is, and it's not in many of the history books, I think it's one of the seminal changes in Ireland, and that is the idea of a secret ballot.
Yes.
Okay. Because up to that, the landlords would they were quite in to bring all their tenants along, bring them in to vote, and stand around while they voted openly and tell them who to vote for. So now, for the first time, the tenant, and if they didn't vote the right way, you could say, maybe at the end of the year now I'll get another tenant. So it was hugely difficult for them, but for anyone to vote, for the Irish Parliamentary Party or whatever. But then there was a huge change, a secret ballot, and within a few years after that, by 1874, you have the Irish Parliamentary Party, hugely powerful, Catholic, nationalistic, in favour of home rule, and they're in the British Parliament, and soon then a new charismatic leader comes on board, and he's Charles Stewart Parnell, and they bring about huge change.
Tell us about the emergence of Parnell and how huge that was. I'm not sure we all have a proper grasp of that.
It was absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Even though he was a Protestant, really he was representing the Catholics in Ireland. That's how they were elected. It was the first time under the Irish Parliamentary Party that the nationalist voice and the Catholic voice in Ireland could be heard. And as well as that, was very important, was now they could vote whatever way they wanted. So they elected people who wanted an end to landlordism in Ireland. And this would have been, that was what they were. The first thing they were campaigning for, well, ultimately at the end to landlordism in Ireland. But what Parnell wanted was, he set about even though he's a landlord himself, he fought on behalf of the tenants, and in the end what they campaigned for with another charismatic individual, Michael Davitt, was a whole change in the landlord system, fair rent. They wanted land courts set up to set the rent. Ultimately they were set up, a fixity of tenure, that you couldn't be elected arbitrarily while you paid your rent, and free sale, that you could sell the interest in your property onto another tenant without recourse to the landlord. And the land war was fought on that. And Michael Davitt worked with Parnell, I don't know, and Davitt was a fascinating character. He was an exact opposite of Parnell. In Mayo, tiny farm, evicted from that, forced to emigrate to Britain, became a child labourer in a cotton mill and lost his arm in an accident at 11 years of age, working in a cotton mill. But it worked well for him, because a benefactor took pity on him and sent him to provided for a very good education. He was smart, in a Wesleyan school. And Parnell and Davitt were able to work hand in glove, and they brought about reform. And I'll tell you how they did it. You'll probably know, up to that there was always violence against landlords. Well, you could arrest people, and there could be a lot of things, and you could ultimately, could be put to death for that. But they evolved a new thing, the boycott. And this is how they did it. And it's very hard because what you're talking about is you won't talk to somebody, you won't serve him, you won't go into a pew beside him in church. You can't charge anybody with a crime there. And if I just say, this is how Parnell announced it. When a man takes a farm from which another has been evicted, you must shun him on the roadside. When you meet him, you must shun him on the streets of the town. You must shun him in the shop. You must shun him in the fair green and in the marketplace and even in the place of worship, as if he were a leper from olden days.
Wow, strong stuff.
That's what he said at a meeting in Ennis, and within 3 years, the British government caved in, the landlords caved in, you had fair rent, free sale, and fixed it here for tenure.
And of course then Kitty O'Shea appeared, and he was brought down, big time, wasn't he?
Absolutely. That was, the Kitty O'Shea affair was the biggest split
She was a married woman at the time, wasn't she?
What?
She was a married woman at the time, wasn't she?
No, well, she wasn't. Kerryman said she wasn't. She was separated for 5 years from her husband. Yeah. But I think the interesting thing is here. Do you remember Bertie Ahern when he came to power? He was hugely popular, and he was separated from his wife, and he was living with Celia Larkin. Now, there's a couple of sniffy comments from the Bishop of Dublin, but in general, it made absolutely no difference. No. He went on to being a huge vote getter, lead Fianna Fáil to victory.
One of those popular Fianna Fáil leaders of all time. In fact, you could almost say that, himself and Celia were part of the Bertie brand. So it just shows how much things have changed in that time. When, okay, we get back to this about everything was going very, very well. And then, was going well. And what had happened was Parnell was a single man. And he had met this woman at a party, and she was Catherine O'Shea. Now, the first thing is, she's not Kitty O'Shea. Everyone says she's Kitty. There are Kitty O'Shea's pubs all over the world. Sure.
She was never called Kitty O'Shea. They should be Catherine O'Shea's, but maybe it doesn't sound Irish enough.
Oh, where did the Kitty bit, just from sort of folky stuff, was it?
Pardon?
Where did the Kitty bit come from?
I don't know. We might offend Kitties now by saying this, but I think the Protestants in England thought it was a more derogatory Irish.
Sure.
And there was, of course, an awful lot in the British press at that time of anti-Irish feeling, and they were only looking for problems. So Catherine O'Shea then, they met at a party. Now, it's always said they had an affair. I disagree with that. What happened was in 1880 they met, presumably fell in love, and they went living together down in Brighton, and they lived as a married couple. But it would have been impossible virtually for them to get divorced. It was very difficult, very expensive, and you had to prove adultery in the other partner. How would you prove that? So they lived together, and they had 3 children. And most people, like with O'Connell's infidelities, most people at the very top of the church and knew what was going on, naturally enough. But it was never public. One thing he was different from Bertie Ahern. Celia would have attended functions. Yeah. She never attended functions, and it went on. And that was fine. People knew about it, and it went on for a good while. And then Captain O'Shea decided to drop in a bombshell. Now, he was one of Parnell's MPs, but he had been drummed out of the party. And sometimes they say he stayed married to Catherine. He could, because obviously, if you want to call it, I hate using the word, but the word that would have been used in court then was adultery. Yes. Well, if there are 3 children, the case. So, but he never did that. And the reason is, they say, she had a very rich aunt. And he was hoping, she had a very rich aunt, Catherine O'Shea. And he was hoping that if he was still married, that he could be cut in for half of that, because he was always in debt. When that didn't happen, and then he got drummed out of the Irish Parliamentary Party, even though he was working with Parnell, he was working with Parnell, everybody knew. Suddenly it became public, and as I say, then, And
of course the Catholic Church then turned against him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you ever hear this? If you're in politics and you need a good friend, get a dog. And Parnell found out very, very quickly that his friends who would be there all the time suddenly turned against him. Gladstone turned against him. It's surprising he was British. But what really nailed him was when the Catholic Church turned against him. And then there was a meeting in room 19 of the House of Commons, and the parliamentary party split. And then what happened was, actually, as it happened, he didn't survive much longer after that. He he passed on. But what he had done up to that, he had achieved a huge amount. He had brought in the Home Rule Bill. He had brought in a Home Rule Bill. He had got it to be debated. The Liberal Party had supported it. Some people crossed the floor. But in 1886, he had gotten within 30 votes, which is actually 15 if you cross the House.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. He had gotten that close to winning Home Rule for Ireland. He had won enormous amount for the the farmers of Ireland. And the first money was made available by the British Conservative government to actually buy back the land of Ireland. He'd done a huge amount, but it all turned against him because of the alleged adultery affair, whatever you call it, which wasn't.
All right, well, fascinating as usual, and we will pick up from there because, of course, again, another pivotal organisation, the GAA, of course, and we will probably take it from there next time around. Great to see you, John. Thanks very much indeed for that. The great John Gio Dwyer with us there. We'll take a break. We're back with more 11:26 right now.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today. Now, our finest singer, certainly one of our finest singers, Tommy Fleming, bringing his music to Nenagh Arts Centre tomorrow night, May 8th, for a very special performance ahead of his show, an intimate evening of songs and stories. Tommy is with us in studio this morning. Good morning,
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, and it's great to see you. I was saying I'm kind of jealous because like you've lost weight and you're looking great and all of that kind of thing.
The gym has become the best friend for a while. I took a break there last year for a few months, well, more than a few months.
Yeah.
I took a bit of a sabbatical and kind of just getting bits together and getting the head together.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to go back and go back to the stage for a couple of shows, smaller shows, much smaller shows. And basically to keep the head right, I became very involved in the gym and exercise and all of that. So yeah. It's great. I find it very therapeutic, to say the least.
It's good. Taking a sabbatical, is that important every so often? I see other singers doing it.
So it is to some people, I suppose. Some people could be the worst nightmare, you know.
Yeah.
When I discovered I had a few. My head really wasn't in the great place last year at all. I was burned out.
Yeah.
I had reached a point that I couldn't. I was on automatic pilot completely. I was on the stage, I didn't even know what I was singing sometimes. And I just said, that's it, I need to stand back.
Yeah.
I need to absolutely stand back. 35 years of doing what I'm doing. And just burnout. And I never realised how much burnout was. I sought help and things like that. A lot of help, actually, in St. Pat's. In Dublin, in Lucan, and that recharged me to a degree, to a great degree, and I just stood back and had a look at my life and where it was, and took a break, and I just needed it. I needed a 100% break from everything. I know the funny thing is, Fran, I didn't listen to music for about 4 or 5 months.
Did you not?
No, I didn't listen to music at all.
But that had been your soul.
Absolutely, it had been my heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. I wasn't able to even pick up the guitar. I went back into myself, if that makes sense. I hid for a while, and then it came back to me. We'll say about 2 months ago, And I just said, you know what, I'm going to do a few small dates
and
see if it's still there. And so we did Naas. We've done Kilworth, Bantier. And I've loved it.
More intimate situation.
Oh, far more intimate. It's kind of, there's a lot of stories surrounding the songs and meaning behind them. Childhood stuff that songs that are attached to that. Some stuff in adulthood, I suppose, as well. And it's just a very kind of very personal show.
It's no wonder to me that you came to a stop, because, I mean, your journey has been remarkable for a lot of reasons. But, I mean, the motor crash, for example, I mean, it was life-changing for you. How you lost your parents along the way as well. I mean, a whole story within itself. I mean, it's been challenging, hasn't it?
It's been challenging. But show me somebody that hasn't had challenges. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's challenge is relative. You know.
Yeah.
When mine might have been the biggest thing that ever happened to me, or the worst thing that ever happened to me, somebody else was going through what they would have felt was the worst thing that was ever happening to them. So you kind of you internalise it. What I did anyway, a lot.
Yeah.
And you just kind of you figure you just feel it's your own battle. And while people are very sympathetic and very helpful, you still have to, my late mum used to always say, in order for you to get to the other side of something that you're going through, you have to go through it.
Yes.
There's no shortcuts, and it's been tough, but those things happened many years ago. And I suppose in a lot of ways, I didn't deal with them.
Yes.
And I certainly didn't deal with the trauma of any of those things. However, I've kind of in the autumn of my life, I would hope it's the autumn because it's certainly not the spring or the summer. I suppose I'm dealing with them now,
Yes.
And dealing with them as best as I can.
After St. Pat's, the first night back, what was that like? I mean, was that like starting over almost?
It was terrifying.
Was it?
Yeah. It was terrifying. I was very, very nervous. I hadn't sang a note in 7 months. Never sang. Didn't even sing in the shower, as I would have always done. I don't think I even hummed, if that makes sense. Any radio show I listened to it was usually podcasts I listened to.
Yeah.
And I kind of, stupidly, I suppose, I went down the road of the self-help podcasts and all that. But actually, by the time you've listened to one of them, you're going, oh, Jesus, I can't be dealing with that. There's better ways of doing this. And, I suppose finding myself again is what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
When you have to spend time in some place like St. Pat's, is that humbling to some degree, Tommy? Is that?
I don't know if it's humbling. It's grounding.
Yeah.
It certainly makes you see how fragile.
Yeah.
You can become, or how not fragile or not weak. It's it's very much about it's okay not to be okay type of thing. It's it makes you realise asking for help is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And it just gave me time to breathe. It gave me time to, I suppose, stop shouting at the waves to get back.
Yeah.
And let the tide come in and see how I can cope with it.
The show tomorrow night in Nenagh is beautiful. I'm sure have you played there before in the Arts Centre?
It's a long time since I've played it.
It's a gorgeous intimate space.
It's a lovely intimate space. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
It must be 10 or 11 years since I played it,
Yeah.
if not more.
So what? Obviously songs, but stories and
the songs I haven't touched in so many years. And if somebody said to me, "What are your favourite ones on it?" There's a new song. I was working in Scotland last year in working on recording songs with a great guy called Adam Holmes, and it was a very folky kind of thing that we went back doing. And I found this song called BT45, which was written by a young lad called J.C. Stewart from Dungiven. And he just said it's about living in where he lived, and that the happiest time was when he was at home, and he didn't realise that till he was away from home. And that kind of, that I was really drawn to that one. But there's one that really kind of stands out for me, which was Simon and Garfunkel's Kathy song. And I remember growing up in my home with Mum and Dad and the rest of my siblings. And every Sunday the red record player would come out. And my mother and father had this amazing collection of LPs, vinyls. It's still in the house, actually. And every album from Jim Reeves to the Carpenters, Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, down to, and then Simon and Garfunkel would be put on. And this song always, it and Sound of Silence are the two songs that stood out for me every time I heard them. And so I started singing this song, Kathy's song, and it's just beautiful. It's just
gorgeous.
And it's like, it's songs that I just haven't done or explored.
Yes.
In a long time.
Are you kind of returning almost to the beginning, to the folky stuff?
I am, very much so. Very much stripping it back. Yeah. Like when we would be organising or producing a show, we would start with a guitar and a piano, or else both, and you build the bones of it.
Yes.
So we used to always say, let's build the skeleton and then put the flesh around it. And, that's how we did. That's how we would kind of make an album work or make a tour work. And whereas, as a matter of, what I loved always was when I'd be off and I'd sit in the corner of a music session in a pub, and you sang the song with just a guitar, or just a bouzouki or even a mandolin. And it just gave you the bones of it.
Yes, and it's a great test of a song.
It's a great test of a song. It's an amazing test of a song.
Needless to say, a great test of a singer as well to keep that together. We'll have a listen. What have I lined up here? My Old Friend.
Oh God, yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a song I co-wrote actually for when 2014. I was doing a show called Paddy, where I was with my other hat on me as an actor.
Yes.
And I was playing the lead in it, and this was co-written with Jerry Carney.
And we put Paddy, of course.
And we put this song toward the end of the show. But where the inspiration came from with this song was 2 years previous to that is when I lost my mum and dad on the 30th of March, both of them on the same day, 2012. And I never really dealt with that, never properly. I ran away from it more than dealt with it. And that when I started singing this song, it was me, I suppose it was me saying goodbye finally, me letting go, accepting it. And the great thing about having a song like that was I got to stand on the stage and say goodbye every night.
Wow.
When I was there. And, it brought new meaning every time I sang it. Then I stopped singing it completely for a long time. And I've started singing it again in the shows. Excellent. So I kind of get to, I suppose it brings me closer to people that I've lost. That's one thing.
Let's have a listen to it. By the way, Tommy, tomorrow night at the lovely Nenagh Arts Centre, and if you want to talk to them there, it's 067 312 14 in terms of tickets, or indeed, of course, you can go online, and it's Nenagh Arts, that's all one word, lowercase.com. That's NenagHarts.com, and that number again, 067 312 14. Let's have a listen to Goodbye My Old Friend.
Goodbye, my old friend. Your troubles are now over. Rest your weary bones. There's nothing left to do. Farewell, my old companion. Be remembered, and as you leave this world, I thought the world of you. All that was in your heart, you carried on your shoulders. Of your old hand is embedded in the past. laughter. You're ready for the road that takes you home at last. Goodbye, my old friend. Don't be afraid, I'm with you. I'll guide you to the light. Your restless spirit free, and parting holds such pain. There may be no tomorrow. The dreams inside your heart will all come true for me. Goodbye, my old friend. I have to let you go now. You were the gentle breeze that light upon my way. I know you won't be far. You're that angel on my shoulder. So goodbye, my old friend. We'll meet again someday. Goodbye, my old friend. We'll meet again someday.
Goodbye, my old friend. It's gorgeous, isn't it? I mean, I know you wrote it yourself, and it's hard for you to say that about your own stuff, but it's just it's just gorgeous.
It's poignant.
Yeah.
It's true, and it brings a lot of meaning to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as long as that happens, if that helps somebody, that's great.
The songs over the years, I mean, I'm thinking of, if we have time, we'll play. I'm thinking of songs like The Contender and songs that you have made your own. Will they always be part of the topic?
Written by Jimmy McCarthy, of course.
Yeah.
Hard Times.
Yeah.
You can't, that's always going to be the end of a show. There's many songs that, like, you know, another one that has become very much a staple with me was Christy Hennessy's Roll Back the Clouds.
Yeah.
I suppose songs that kind of land on my lap, and you know, I get them the minute I hear them. Some songs I don't get, and whereas it works for somebody else, it will not work for me. I'm not that, you know, if I think it doesn't suit me, then you know that, you know, you might pass it on to somebody like Michael English, who's a great singer, great performer. People that, you know, lads that you know in the business, that you say, or no, that one isn't for me. Pass that one there and see will it work there. So yeah, the songs that I like, Isle of Hope, Isle of Tears, that's written by Brendan Graham, of course. An awful lot of the songs are Irish writers.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know if that's by default or purposefully. I don't know. The songs were great, and it works. Some of the songs work, even with the American writers like Mary Chapin Carpenter doing Jubilee. These are songs that I've had around me for years.
I love your version of the Gordon Lightfoot song, Song for a Winter's Night.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's a gorgeous song. Yeah. Where did I get that? I think that was my sister that got that for me. She was on about when I was doing the Christmas album. It was for my sister Marie. And she said, remember the Gordon Lightfoot album you used to listen to when you were a kid?
Yeah.
And I said, did I? And she said, yeah. I said, wouldn't that be a great name for a Christmas album, Song for a Winter's Night? And I said, that's the name of the Christmas album.
Yeah.
So things like that. A lot of the songs were born out of memory, out of childhood, especially the Irish songs, the ballads. Where I went to school, this amazing teacher, Phil Toohey, and she was phenomenal. and you'd have learned all these ballads for the likes of Scorn and Oak or for the Fesh or whatever it might have been. And you never forgot them.
Yeah.
You know, you never ever forgot them. You know, like Fiddler's Green.
Oh, yeah.
All of those songs that Danny Boy, of course, that the version I got that I thought was my dad gave me the version of Danny Boy that I have, and it's got
an amazing version. You've got that whole other portion on it.
The whole other portion of it's like a prelude to it.
Yes.
And I thought for years that this was a thing that was handed down through the generations, you know. And I remember I used to say this in America when I'd be on the stage. I'd stand on the stage and go, you know, I got this version of this version of Danny Boy from my dad, and you know, it was handed down through the generations, and I felt I was the custodian of it, and this went on and on and on. And by the time I'd finished the tour, I'd gone back to 1688 with relatives. But anyway, I discovered subsequently when I came home one year, I was asking him about it, and he said, "What are you on about, Tommy, getting that handed down?" He said, "I got that of a Roy Orbison record." So I had to go back on the stage in America trying to figure out how I was going to explain this one. And anyway, how he did it was, I went back and I stood on the stage and I said, "I'm really proud of this version of the song that I got from my dad, which he got from Roy Orbison." And then, of course, the audience thought that he was friends with Roy Orbison. So I didn't make them any the wiser. But you know, those kind of things.
It's great. Did you ever pass over on a song? Did you ever pass over on a song?
That I regretted?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you?
Oh, I did. Yeah. When I was given "You Raised Me Up," there was myself, Brian Kennedy. Somebody else was given it. It's Ronan Tynan, actually. And I just said, "No, that one isn't for me."
Oops.
Yeah, I passed on that one. And eventually I recorded it, I think, 5 years later. So I passed on that one. What else? I passed on one or two that I thought, that was a bad move.
Is that interesting?
I passed on Grace, actually, a version of Grace.
You did not?
I did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. I just didn't feel it at the time.
Yeah.
And then I don't. It's not that I regret it.
Yeah.
You know, if it's for you, it won't pass you by. You know.
Of course.
And so the other people that recorded it did great versions of them. You know.
Yeah.
So I've passed on a few songs, and you know, I've kind of gone, "Oh, I didn't have my eye on the prize there, did I?"
Yeah, well, again, maybe it just didn't suit you.
Yeah, maybe, possibly.
You felt at the time. You mentioned Jimmy McCarthy, and we mentioned the Contender. Will we have a listen to at least a bit of it, because it's one of those, I guess, you can't do a show without, I suppose.
Indeed, you can't.
Let's have a listen.
When I was young and I was in my day, sure I'd steal what woman's heart there was away, and I'd sing into the dawning, so I'd blaze into the morning, long before I was the man you see today. I was born beneath the star that promised all. I could live my life without Cassandra's call, but the wheel of fortune took me from the highest point. She shook me by the bottle, if by the bottle I should fall. And there in the mirror on the wall, I see the dream is fading, from the contender to the brawl. The ring, the rose, the matador, reigning. When I die, I'll die drunk down on the street. He will count me out to 10 and clear the feed. Wrap the starry plough around me, let the piper's air resound me. There I rest until the Lord of love I meet. There in the mirror on the wall, I see the dream is fading. From the contender to the brawl, the ring, the rose, the matador, reigning. Oh, there in the mirror on the wall, I see the dream is fading. From the contender to the brawl, the ring, the rose, the matador, reigning.
I couldn't help but think when we're listening to that, Tommy, it's one thing getting a great song, and we were talking about that, but to get a great arrangement then around a song is so vital, isn't it? I mean,
it is, yeah.
And it's all there, isn't it, when you listen back to it?
I've worked with great producers over the years, and the one thing I've always done is sat in beside them and learned from them.
Yeah.
And learned certain little tricks, or learned, and then not be afraid to say, can we try this, or can we try it? You know, put your own ideas into it, no matter how mad it sounds.
Yeah.
You know, my dad used to always say, no question, no question is ever too stupid. Just never be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
Never be afraid to say you don't know how to do something. Always, just stand up and learn from it. And so, like working with the likes of David Hayes, working with say, Mike Moran in London, all of those, like even when I sat in on the production of the duet I did with Elaine Page, and I was sitting in with like Mike Moran on this with a full orchestra, and you're kind of going, you're a bit overwhelmed by it,
yeah,
but you're also overwhelmed by the fact that you're telling this vocalist or singer, this legend, maybe to do it this way or do it that way.
Yes.
And the amazing part of that was she was actually listening, and she would say, "Which? Do you want me to go? Do you want me to go lower on that, or do you want me to?" So I'd say try both sides and see what happens, and if they work, they work. And and I used to laugh when I was in the studio with her, and she never called me Tommy, darling, darling, darling. How do you want me to do this, darling? And so to this day, she still calls me darling. And even the other evening, I laughed because I sent her a message congratulating her on the Lifetime Achievement Award in the Tonys. And it was the Tonys, and I was laughing because I got the text came in, and Kathy, my sister, seen the text coming in on my phone, and she said, "Oh, darling is calling."
Very good. Yeah.
But
isn't it often? I mean, I found that over the years. The better the star, the bigger the star, the easier they are to direct or to deal with, or
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we do a job. You do a job. The man outside on the street is doing a job.
Yeah.
We all do a job. There's no job more important or better than the other. And, we all get up in the morning and put our trousers on one leg at a time. Do you know what I mean? So there's, at the end of the day, if I don't understand the whole idea of if celebrity or whatever they want to call it, I just don't get it.
Yeah,
never got it.
Losing the run of themselves.
Absolutely completely losing it.
Tomorrow night, it's an 8 o'clock start.
It's an 8 o'clock start tomorrow night, yeah.
And it's Nenagh Arts. That's all lowercase and all one word. NenaghArts.com if you want to book your tickets online. You can talk to them there as well, and you can give them a call right now. In fact, it's 067 312 14. There's still a few tickets left for that, but it should be marvellous altogether. I bet you're looking forward to it now.
I am actually. I'm really looking forward to it.
And you're in Moat, and a lot of people up around North
Up in the
Tipperary.
Tour Arts, which I haven't played, I'd say, in 15 years.
Yeah.
So I'm up in that tomorrow, or Saturday night. Saturday the 9th. So it's kind of Nenagh tomorrow night and Moat in the Tour Arts on Saturday night.
All right. Well,
so it's hopefully it'll be good to see the people there.
Well, it's always great to see you, and thank you for coming down.
That's
to
all.
us.
Thanks a million for having me.
You're always welcome here, Tommy, and we wish you the very, very best with everything. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Fran. Take care.
That's it from me. Leanne produced. Stephen is on the way with the Time Tunnel on the lunchtime show, and I will talk to you from our Clonmel studio tomorrow. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.